In the case of Israel, they rejected Jesus out of disobedience and rebellion toward God. And now that brings us to chapter 11, where we pick up the study today. And the point that Paul makes in our passage today is, even though most of Israel rejected Jesus Christ, God did not reject Israel. Even though most of Israel rejected Jesus Christ, God did not reject Israel. God has not rejected Israel. God has not abandoned Israel because Israel rejected Jesus Christ. God has not canceled his promises that he made to Israel in the Old Testament. God has not canceled his covenants that he made with Israel. We've mentioned in a previous study that God made a total of 5 covenants with Israel. 4 of the 5 covenants are unconditional covenants. Only the Mosaic covenant was a conditional covenant that required obedience for blessing. But the other 4 covenants, the Abrahamic covenant, the priestly covenant, the Davidic covenant, and the new covenant, those are unconditional covenants. And they're also eternal covenants, which means they are everlasting covenants. They don't end. They're still in effect even today. God does not revoke those promises that he made. And so God has not rejected Israel. The church has not replaced Israel. In the scriptures, the church and Israel are 2 separate groups. In fact, in the scriptures, you find three groups. You've got Israel, or the Jews, you've got the Gentiles, and you have the church. And they're 3 separate groups. The church is made up of believing Jews and believing Gentiles. And so in our passage here in chapter 11, Paul really drives home the point that God has not cast aside Israel because of her rejection of Jesus Christ. And Paul frames this passage with 2 questions. First question is in verse 1, where he says, "I say then, has God cast away his people?" And Paul answers, "Certainly not." Then the second question is down in verse 11. In verse 11, "I say then, have they stumbled," speaking of Israel, "have they stumbled that they should fall?" Meaning, has Israel fallen beyond recovery? Have they fallen permanently? And Paul answers, certainly not. God has not cast away Israel. Israel has not fallen beyond recovery. Israel will be recovered. They have not fallen permanently. Israel's fall is temporary. They will turn to Christ eventually. It's important for us to understand what the Bible says about Israel and about the Jewish people. It's important that we know God's future plan for Israel and the Jewish people. Israel is really the key to understanding Bible prophecy. And Israel is really the key to understanding the return of Jesus Christ. You know, in 1 Chronicles in the Old Testament, the sons of Issachar are commended because they understood the times that they were living in. And we want to be like the sons of Issachar. We want to understand the times that we are living in and understand how everything is fitting together prophetically according to the scriptures. And the biggest piece of the puzzle and God's plan for the future is Israel. The biggest piece of the puzzle to understanding the times is Israel. In the New Testament, Jesus condemned the religious leaders because they did not discern the signs of the times that they were living in. They were living in the time of the Messiah, and they didn't discern that. They didn't understand that. And so we want to understand the times that we live in, and Israel is a big piece, the biggest piece in understanding the times that we live in. There's a terrible false doctrine that has been around the church for about 1,800 years, believe it or not, since about the 2nd or 3rd century. called replacement theology. I'm sure you probably have heard of it. I've mentioned it before from the pulpit. Replacement theology, also known as supersessionism. And replacement theology holds that the Jewish people have lost their standing with God because they rejected Jesus Christ. And the church has replaced Israel. That's where the name replacement theology comes from. And replacement theology teaches that all the promises God made to Israel are now symbolically transferred to the church. And replacement theology would say that the return of the Jews to their homeland of Israel over the last 150 years and the rebirth of the nation of Israel in 1948 is just an anomaly. It's just a political coincidence. And the return of the Jews to their homeland, the rebirth of Israel in 1948, has no significance biblically, no significance prophetically, no significance theologically. God has nothing to do with that because the Jews are no longer God's chosen people. The promised land is no longer promised to Israel. Those promises to Israel have been revoked or canceled and transferred now to the church. And really the return of the Jews to their homeland and the rebirth of the nation of Israel, those are all signs. Those are preparing the way for the return of Jesus Christ. In fact, Bible scholars refer to the rebirth of Israel as the super sign that we are living in the last days and that the return of Jesus Christ is drawing near.